everyone, it's Renee with Delaney Jane Cards, and welcome to Create and Inkspire, a little brainchild of Courtney Kreber, and she has invited me to share a video with you. And today we are going to take an old technique and modernize it just a bit, but we have to get there. So we're going to start out with the basics. First, we are going to heat emboss an image onto some Arches cold press watercolor paper. We're going to heat emboss that with clear. So I have my little piece of paper here, and it is cut to fit inside my mini MISTI, and I have my embossing bag there handy. So we're going to do a little bit of embossing first. This is a stamp set by Gina K. It's called Wild Roses. I have used it a couple of times now. I love it. I didn't watercolor it. I Copic colored it. Anyway, we're going to watercolor it kind of today. We're going to do a technique where we iron off the embossing. I know, why would we do that, right? But first we need to put the embossing on. Embossing powder is plastic. It's just really finely ground up pieces of plastic. So that's why it melts with our heat guns. That's why if you overheat it, it kind of looks funny. But that will allow us to do this technique. Now, the first time I seen this technique was lots of years ago, but people would use their regular clothes iron, and then into the crafting world came a little craft iron, and we will take a look at that. But here I had this mask kind of already pre-done from a previous card, and I just wanted an additional bit of floral here, so I'm just using this kind of mask to add a little bit extra to my piece here. I'm going to heat emboss that really quick, melt it down. I know you can't really see anything, but it's there, I swear. I just used my clear embossing powder on that clear sticky ink. So it's basically just a bunch of clear on some white paper. Now I'm going to tape down my piece of paper, and I'm going to use painter's tape, and I did run it across the leg of my pants just to take a little bit of the sticky off, and I'm going to adhere it down right to my glass mat. I'm not going to really get it super wet, so it's not going to really matter too much. It's going to get wetter later after I take the tape off, which you'll see when we get there. So I have a little bit of water here. Now I kind of wish I would have just used this lighter color. I wanted to make it so I could see the image. It's fine. It's beautiful in the end. I do think it turned out just fine. So I'm just putting a little wash on here of this color, adding some darker spots and some lighter spots, and you can see all of that floral now. You can see all the outline. Looks like white embossing. It's really just clear, but it looks like white embossing. And I'm going to use my Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers, and I am not going to show you all of this, but I am going to show you close up and slow here. So I took the darker pink, and then I pulled it out with this lighter pink, and I am going to pull this out with my blender brush. I could have used water. They work with water just fine. And if I was to color these and not do this technique, I would probably do exactly this and paint them like this. If I had stamped it in black, I would have done the same thing. So here I'm going to show you just a couple more flowers. Put the darker color in where there's shadows, where petals overlap, and add the lighter colors. Now the technique that I'm doing doesn't exactly matter if the shading is all in the right spots. Nobody is going to pick this apart when we're done. So darker color, then lighter color. I'm just going to show you here a couple more times. I got comfortable enough with this moving on this Archer's paper that I did a couple of flowers at a time. Then I went over to the partial image, and now I'm moving on to my greens. I used two greens, a darker, brighter green and a lighter green, just to add a little bit of variation in tone. Doesn't do much really as far as variation in tone. I just really needed green in these places. Now remember, green and pink make brown. You always hear everybody say makes mud, but mud is brown. So you have to be careful. This technique, you will get, if you're careful, you will not get brown. You'll get a kind of earthy color, but you won't get brown. You'll get something that is, nice to the eyes. So here I was checking to see if it was dry enough to pull my paper or my tape off, and I always peel it back on itself like that. This is sped up right here, so I did it way slower than what you're seeing, just to make sure it didn't tear my paper. Now, this is how this technique used to work. Now remember, we used to use our actual like clothes irons, and then they came out with this little tiny craft iron. Now it was not doing what I wanted it to do fast enough. I am, impatient. So I decided I was just going to use one piece of paper and I was going to heat this up. Now, this technique used to be done on just regular cardstock and not on, watercolor cardstock. And watercolor cardstock is very thick, so it takes a little bit to heat it up. So I was doing my best here, and then I was like, there has got to be a better way. This is the better way. Pull out your laminator. Now, when I run anything through my laminator, I always run it through like face side up and then turn it over and then turn it back over again. I'm not sure how it actually works inside the laminator where the heating part is, but I just want to make sure that everything is heating evenly, so I always try to do that. With this technique, what I'm really doing is melting the embossing powder onto the piece of printer paper. And you can see how I had to peel that off. The embossing plastic transferred itself to that sheet. So then I like flipped it over inside my little carrier sheet and I ran it through a few more times using a few more pieces of paper. So now all that embossing powder is gone. It's just white lines. So then I sprayed everything to kind of give a messy watercolor look here. And it's going to stain some of those white lines with a much lighter pigment than what's in the background. It's also going to spread the green and the pink kind of to give it kind of a messy watercolor look. But the technique here is removing that embossing powder so that this can spread. That's the whole point of embossing when you paint, is so that it holds the color in, and this kind of allows you to take that away. Now, this is really cool if you are layering things. You can use this technique, without the watercolor, but you can emboss something, color it, remove the embossing, emboss something else over the top. Basically, you're going to trap the ink, and then you can remove that again, and people are going to wonder how you got that clean, crisp color without any embossing on there. Here I ran this die through and it did not cut in this one spot. I always have a hard time in this one spot. So I take this is an older bone folder, and I just run it along the back of the die and it cuts through the paper. So this is a Simon Says stamp die. I really didn't want to cut the inside out. I just wanted that scalloped edge. I do like that line border there. So I did die cut that little skinny frame twice and the Heartfelt Sympathy a bunch of times. And that's from Tonic. And then I stamped the So Very Sorry from the same Gina Case set onto a piece of vellum. I stamped it in black and I embossed it in clear. The reason I didn't emboss it in black is because I have no other real black on this card. Everything is light gray, and my darkest tone there is that green. So I wanted to kind of keep it soft, and vellum kind of tones down, waters down that black a little bit, so it doesn't look so strikingly black. So I'm layering this piece of, I don't know, olive green. I don't know what kind of green cardstock this is, but I'm layering that on a piece of really light gray, which matches the Heartfelt Sympathy and that skinny little frame that I have there. And now I'm going to add some tape adhesive and glue this down to my panel. And you can see how that green just kind of pops with the rest of it there. And I glued down my little tiny frame, and like I said, that's 2 frames layered together. It just adds a little bit of bulk. I want this to be dainty and pretty, but I didn't want it to, I needed to kind of frame in that image a little bit more. So here I'm adhering the Heartfelt Sympathy die cut to this piece of vellum. You can see through vellum, so you got to make sure that you hide the adhesive. So that's what I'm doing here, and just sticking it down where it's got the Heartfelt Sympathy behind it. And then here just making sure everything is tacked down really nicely. I did add some sequins to this card here. It's just a Simon Says mix. pulled some out that kind of had that green or pink hue to them and glued them down. For the inside, now I have always finished the insides of my sympathy cards. My company, Delaney Jane Cards, was started because of in honor of my daughter. And one of the things that I always felt is sympathy cards were very hard to write what you wanted to write in the inside. And so I figured a lot of times it's just easier to sign your name. So I have always finished the insides of sympathy cards, kind of because we got tons of cards when she passed away. And I know that some people really struggled with what to put in the inside. So I always finish them. Anyway, I stamped the same floral image, and then I pulled out a My Sentiments Exactly MSE stamp set, and I stamped a sympathy sentiment on the inside of this. You can use this for anything. It doesn't have to be a sympathy card, but I'd like to know if you are going to try this technique. You can see here where the white lines are kind of tinted in some places. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you and welcome to Create and Inkspire.